So let's get started. Please welcome Lisa Cherry, AAUW Illinois State President. Lisa?
Jennifer, thank you. Well, it's lovely to be with you all. I'm really excited about the number of attendees. This is wonderful. I'm glad to see so much interest. But before we get going here, I want to give a huge thank you to the Jane Addams virtual branch. Jane Addams branch conceived, developed, and they are hosting us tonight. And I also want to thank them for the wonderful programs that they have brought us throughout the year. Never knew we would need a virtual branch as much as we did this past year, but thanks so much to Jane Addams. Well, now I have the pleasure of introducing three wonderful panelists. First up, Nancy Shoemaker. Nancy is coming to us from North Carolina tonight, but don't worry, she knows all about Illinois. She is a member of the Jane Addams virtual branch. In addition to recognizing the importance of a virtual branch, Nancy is the co-founder of OpenUpAAUW, founded in 2010. If you have not been up on their website, I encourage you to do so. It has a wealth of information about OpenUp membership. Marti Sladek. Marti, our own Marti from our Downers Grove branch. You can see by Marti's banner in her photo, decades of work for ERA. Strong, strong advocate. And also a strong advocate for open membership. We're really lucky to have you here, Marti.
Thank you.
And Ruth, our own Ruth Sweetser. Ruth is a dual member of Chicago branch and also our Lombard branch. She is a former state president. And most importantly, she from 2005 to 2009 was national president for AAUW. Well, let's get going here. You know, when I attend any sort of meeting, I always like to know, a little bit of a roadmap for what we're going to accomplish tonight. So we're going to look at the open membership amendment. We're going to talk about some important endorsements. Then we're going to look to our panelists to give us their points of view on the benefits and the importance of adopting this amendment. Next up, and probably the most important thing in my mind, is that we're going to have your questions, and our wonderful panelists are going to be fielding your questions. Hopefully at the end we'll have time for a little what's next, because we're AAUW, we don't just want information, we want action. So we'll talk a little bit about what we can do regarding the open amendment. So any change has to be relevant. AAUW has evolved over time. In order to maintain our effectiveness and to achieve our mission, it's been mandatory. And now your national board has put forth this amendment. And let's take a look at what the national board actually has to say. Here's a statement that was issued. Strongly supporting the elimination of the degree requirement for membership and putting it up for a vote this year. This important change is a critical step in bringing our bylaws and membership requirement in line with our mission of advancing equity for women and girls. And this last sentence is so important. While AAUW is fiercely committed to the educational attainment of all women, fiercely committed to the educational attainment. Given our commitment to inclusion, this is simply the right thing to do. Well, that's the national board, and this is the statement, proposed amendment itself. It's simple, one sentence. An individual who supports the AAUW mission and pays annual AAUW dues shall be eligible to be an individual member with all rights and responsibilities of membership. Very simple, very important. So the board brought forth this action, but at the state level here in Illinois, we're equally committed. In 2017, I was on the board. It was a different board. We voted unanimously in favor of the amendment at that time. And now in 2021, a new board of directors, once again at our board meeting 2 weeks ago, voted to unanimously accept the proposal. So your leadership at the national level, your leadership at Illinois, we're all in favor and so thrilled to be having this town hall. We want to provide all of our members with as much information as we can to move forward with the open amendment. Let's look at some quotes, what people have said about the open amendment. This is from a member. The YMCA doesn't limit its members to young, males, or Christians. Opening our membership doesn't mean we have to take the U out of AAUW. I think I want to add a little more to that one. I'd like to say that, you know, this acronym of ours hasn't really been matching for quite some time now. In fact, the only letter that is absolutely accurate is the second A. We are an association. But American, we are an international, and we do not require you be American. University, well, that also was changed. Colleges, community colleges, institutions with 2-year degrees all qualify. And woman, you know, we have men members, we have changed to have men. And frankly, in today's world, we want to be open and recognizing of the LGBTQ community. So our acronym really has not been completely accurate for quite some time. And yet we are AAUW. This second quote, I think, is important. It comes from 2 presidents out in Idaho. And they're saying that every woman and man who supports our mission, empowering women and girls, we want them to join us in the ongoing challenge of achieving greater equity. Thank you, Kathy and Julie. We couldn't agree more. And then lastly, from Sandy Kirkpatrick. Sandy is on the National Inclusion Committee. I think her comment is so appropriate. She says, my membership is important to me not because of the letters after my name, but because I firmly believe in AAUW's advocacy, education, research, philanthropy, that it is moving the needle on equity for women and girls. I gratefully share anyone else who shares that, welcome anyone else who shares that passion and is willing to work with us on that mission. Asking proof of a degree diminishes the strength of our claim to advocate for all women. And if you've ever been a membership VP, you know how painful that is. We're better than that. It's time to prove it. Thank you so much, Sandy, for your thoughts. I couldn't agree more. Nancy, it's time to hear from you. And I'm really wondering, you've had an awful lot of time to think about this. You co-founded OpenUpAAUW in 2010. You have been thinking about this for a long time.
Actually,
what's important about this?
Thank you, Lisa. And I'm not sure I have a whole lot to add to Lisa, but I will reiterate some of the things that she said. And for me, when I first voted, voted for this in 1999, so it has been a long time. And I'm glad to be here with you tonight. And as Lisa said, I am a member of the Jane Addams branch, and that's my connection to Illinois. And I'm so pleased to be here with Ruth Sweetser, that I met in 2001 when she came to North Carolina for our state convention. And I really credit Ruth and the conversations I had over that weekend with deepening my commitment to AAUW. And I'm also pleased to be here with Kate Skagg of the Jane Addams branch, who's, been a running mate with mine in social media since 2007. So, but back to the question at hand, For me, I mean, it's fairly simple, as it was for Sandy Kirkpatrick and some of the others. This updates our practice to be consistent with our mission. It's just I'm sure there's some of you who are thinking, consistent? What's consistent? I mean, of course, the degree requirement is consistent with who we are. It's who we've always been. It's been a long time that we've had this requirement. And for some in our community, that's how we describe ourselves to members of our community. Come join this network of college graduates. But that's not who we say we are anymore. We say we are working for equity for women. The projects in your branches are done by your wonderful members, but I challenge you to think of anything that the branches do that requires a college degree. And again, I've been working on this for a long time. And so I remember walking away from that 1999 convention thinking, okay, if the charter says we are about uniting graduates of different institutions for work on our mission, then that's what the charter says, and I guess I'll get over it, you know. But in 2009, we updated what we say about ourselves to bring it into the 21st century. And we dropped that language about uniting graduates of different institutions. So I don't want to be legalistic about it. I may leave that to Marty, our lawyer on the team, but it's just,
gee, thanks.
but it is that what we say we are just isn't consistent. And if we can get back to a consistent state, then that will make it easier to introduce AAUW to potential members who, when they bump up against that, I thought I was joining a group working on equity, but you say I have to have a degree. That doesn't make sense. They just get confused. On community leaders, the community allies think we are being elitist and, kind of shy away a little bit. Community leaders may be skeptical of what we're saying because we cannot be representing, the entire community. And donors take the view that we may be, discriminatory and choose to go elsewhere with their dollars. So, and the bottom line, I think, is it will be such a benefit to us if we can welcome all who agree with our mission to our table. We can hear their voices. We can be stronger for it. And I think it's time to make this change. So I hope those of you who are skeptical, ask your questions, listen to how, it's being presented, but think about why it is that your state board and the national board are unanimous in supporting this change. So I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Nancy. Marty, change is difficult. It's very difficult. So I think we really need to be firmly committed. We need to understand, what are we going to gain from this?
First of all, I want to say, when I'm looking at the list of participants, I'm excited to see a lot of my Facebook friends here. That's very cool. These names kept popping up, but I know from Facebook, both of the AAUW pages and my own page. So nice to have you all here. You know who you are. I'm not speaking as a lawyer. I've retired my license. I'm speaking as a life member of AAUW. We are more than a women's organization in 2021. We are a civil rights organization. Equity for women and girls is a very key part of the movement toward overall equity, civil rights, and social justice. And we must be perceived that way. If we're going to work with other organizations, community leaders, religious institutional leaders, and so forth, to move forward on all of these issues that are near and dear to us and to our allies, we have to practice what we preach. And the degree requirement creates a tension with that. It creates a perception that we're really not open to everyone, even who, agrees with the direction that we're going. And that can be off-putting to some people. The materials, the resources, the personnel that we have, we've got a lot of materials, a lot of research, a lot of talent in this organization. It will become more accessible to other organizations that can help us move our agenda forward if we drop this degree requirement and have a more open door, more opening look, more accessibility to our toolkits and our reports and our voter guides, all of those kind of things that we're constantly working on. Nancy mentioned also that there are some individual donors, family donors, and foundations that simply will not give money to an organization that doesn't look like it's very diverse, very inclusive, and truly committed to equity for all. So we're really talking about our organizational credibility here. We've gone through these evolutions before. We've even gone through a name change before, way back in the day, when I kind of wonder if those women also had a similar discussion about what all of this meant as they changed the mission, changed the wording, looked at the name, and so forth. I'm going to divert a little bit here since I brought up name change. We're not talking about a name change here. As far as I know, that's not on the table now. That and may not be. We're still educated women, but it actually enhances us to allow other people to join our efforts. And when we look at what's going on in the branches now, we need to look at what's working and what isn't. And we really think this will work to grow our organization and to help us achieve our goals. So those are some things that we want you all to think about as this comes up for a vote. Thank you all.
Thanks, Marty. Ruth, I bet well, let's see, we've got over 100 people with us tonight, and I bet they all feel just as I do. We love AAUW. We're passionate about AAUW. We don't want, sometimes, we want to understand and we want to know what isn't going to change about the organization that we love.
Well, first of all, thank you for including me in the responders and in this event. I think it's an important one, and pleased to be a responder and to see all the kind of greetings from the various people who are saying hello to chat. It's just great to recognize so many names and to be among friends and acquaintances from many years. And that's what we share, among other things, through AAUW. And so it's not just the acquaintances and working together and the memories and successes that brings, but AAUW's uniqueness depends on our mission. Some people would say it depends on our membership requirement. I don't think that most organizations would bank on having their what they do depends on something far deeper and more important and more durable. And our uniqueness is our commitment to empower all women and girls. And the all can apply to our members as well as to those outside the organization. And so when we say that we want to empower all women and girls, we're really talking about equity. That's that word that keeps popping up. And equity is has always been important, but oftentimes assumed or overlooked or minimized. And until we have an idea of who's in our community and get to know them, one way would be through our branch. It sometimes escapes us what equity would really mean, not just to people we've gotten to know, but to others. And so I'm hopeful that with a membership that is open and welcoming, that we can get to know situations and people and the whole picture of equity, and be able to actually do something with that, rather than trying to do something important and lasting just from the perspective of inside our branch, which is somewhat limiting. Although great people love it, but I think getting to know others, and not just on the outside, but on the inside as well of our branch. So how does this pursuit of equity work? Well, it happens in the branch with our goals and our planning. It also happens in the community. And sometimes we don't have good avenues to work with the community. We all have individual contacts, people we know, neighbors, etc. But to be able to rally a larger operation to examine equity is not always possible. And so I'd just like to share real quickly an example that I think illustrates this. I hope you too. At the last AAUW Illinois convention that I was at, I invited a guest along. Her name was Annie Williams, and she happens to be in a leadership role of Indivisible in Illinois. And we had met before and talked, had coffee, and she said, sure, I'd like to know more about AUW. And it happened that our program included an outline of the AAUW Foundation. And so a number of things that she didn't know about and found very interesting. And it turned out that she was not eligible, even the way AAUW is structured now, to become a member.
Jeez.
And I kept thinking, what a wonderful contact this might be, and how she might really enjoy and grow from being part of us. And then I realized, what can she bring to us? Because she started talking about tech savvy, AAUW's tech savvy. She had heard about or seen something about tech savvy, and turns out she has some technical background. But what was exciting to me was that she had direct inroads, connections to several of the Chicago high schools and middle schools that were part of her jurisdiction with Indivisible. And she wondered whether students, girls from those schools, could be invited to AAUW Tech Savvy. And long story short, we tried to make some connections. I don't really know how it ended up, but I thought, my gosh, what a wonderful connection this is, and how we could benefit, how they could benefit, how she could benefit. And even though she had no qualification formally for being an AAUW member, she would just, I think, welcome that chance still. And so the whole idea of AAUW being unique rests on our sense of, or our ability to be unique and have a focus on equity. It's not so much in the letters after our names and how that all has to be uniform. So what I hope is that our local branches will be an important part of the idea of understanding how equity is attained, and the work that it takes and the avenues that we can use. And I think that will open up maybe some possibilities that we haven't had, the result of which will be, I think, much greater than perhaps having a totally homogeneous membership in that way. And what the last thing that won't change, and because I've been talking about equity, equity is the thing that is not changing. AUW will continue to evolve. We've been around for quite a while, and we're not going to let logos or initials or other kinds of things stand in our way. But we do have to think about how the one thing that is our bedrock, equity for all women and girls, how we can best achieve that and work toward it. And so that's what I hope will be part of our discussion and benefit us going forward. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Ruth. Thanks to all three of you, and stand by, because what's going to happen next is the most important part. Jennifer, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and let's hear the questions.
Okay, panelists, we have over 100 women on tonight, so we have plenty of questions. So here we go. First question out of the box tonight. Why do we not have a panelist on that expresses the other side?
I'll take that.
All right.
We're viewed as leadership in various aspects of Illinois and Illinois branches. We're all people who believe that this is a necessary change to keep up with the times. Part of that keeping up with the times, by the way, is that even secondary education isn't the way we used to define it. You know, you're talking about community colleges and certification programs and proprietary certs and things that, you know, don't fall under traditional college and university definitions. Women in the trades, plumbers are going to make a lot more money and not have any student debt. As this has evolved, and it began as a kind of grassroots bottom-up thing a number of years ago, as Nancy explained, it has now been more of a top-down as well. And those of us who put this together want to explain our position on it. This was not about a pros and cons and debates. Our purpose tonight is simply to tell you why this group of people who are speaking, backed by the state board and our branches and the national board, believe it's in our best interest to drop the degree requirement.
Thank you, Marty. I want to remind everybody else, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A box tonight so we can answer them in this way. Next question. Why is this change being proposed? What do we want to gain from this change?
This is Marty again, if no one else is going to jump in. We're perceived as kind of just a more elite women's club. We have to be more than that in the 21st century. It's not who we are anymore. It's not who we need to be. And all of us have run into situations like what Ruth described with Annie Williams, who is a civil rights powerhouse in Illinois, where there's someone we'd like to work with who can't join us, or an organization that would like to partner with us and gets completely turned off, or someone who assumes that we're a faculty union or that we all work at universities when we really represent a much broader spectrum of our communities than that.
Nancy, here. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, I think there's also the issue of how we are perceived, particularly by younger women. I mean, the national organization has been doing outreach to younger women, Younger Women's Task Force, Equity Network. They're trying different things. But the sense I get is that this degree requirement is really a barrier to them thinking of us as an inclusive organization that's ready for the 21st century. So but I do want to be clear, we are not expecting the floodgates of members to show up at our, open the floodgates, we'll drop the degree requirement, and we're not going to have hordes of members showing up on our doorstep wanting to join, but it's a process. And unless we can remove this barrier, it's very hard to recruit some populations, even ones who are eligible.
The other thing that occurred to me is that we talk a lot and write a lot about encouraging women to pursue whatever level of education they need to pursue for what they want to do. And we want to be models for them to be able to do that. A lot of us have gone back to school, after raising kids and so forth. It's very hard to be a role model and a mentor for someone who can't see that because we don't let them in the room to see it. We're in a better position with open membership to identify the people that we say we want to be assisting with a leg up and coaching and whatever else is involved in helping them achieve their educational goals.
I think this is
now we're talking to the choir.
It's a very strong sentiment. Through one of my daughters-in-law, I have one of her friends has become more than an acquaintance to me. And she offered to take me to lunch sometime before COVID. And I knew what the topic was going to be. And she said, what in the world are you all doing in AAUW? Do you not just want to be around? And so she has her own business, has a young son. I think he's 2 to 3 years old now. And she offered to come and talk and speak or whatever it might take, because she feels that AUW probably has a lot of value. She hasn't been involved, but she would like to be, at least to get a sense, a deeper sense of who we are and what we do. But she has no interest when the membership requirement comes up. And that, she has conveyed to me, is very common among her friends and colleagues. So I think we need to listen to the people who are out there who we very much, I believe, would want to have as part of our organization. As Marty or Nancy said, they're just not interested the way we're structured now.
Nancy, you brought this up earlier. She says she agrees that the charter has changed, but I'm not sure how well that change to the charter has been communicated to the membership or internalized by members. Would you like to speak any further on that?
I think that's right. And I think the moving from the delegate system to the one member, one vote system is another change that was made in 2009. And it's pretty clear that the people who fought to put, or succeeded in putting the degree requirement back in 2009 didn't see that removing that clause from the purpose was inconsistent. So it was at the same convention. We took the clause out of the purpose and put the degree requirement back in. And certainly in the one member, one vote era, that notion has been very difficult to communicate, but hopefully with this is the first time the national board has mounted such an effort to get the word out to all the members. I mean, there's a cadre of volunteers who are working on this. They're assigned different states, and hopefully, I'm not sure that, I'm not sure how we get to the internalized part, but at least the communicating part may be being done better this year than before.
Okay, a different looking at it from a different angle. A couple people brought this up. We might as well ask, what will we lose if we don't do this? Or what's the worst that can happen if these changes are not adopted? And what's the worst that can happen if these changes are adopted?
Well, Marty, are you going to go?
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Ruth.
Otherwise, I can jump in just because we have heard, of course, that from a couple of members in preparation for this town hall, that if the change would be made to not having a degree requirement, that they would be leaving. And while that would be very sad, and we would literally miss them, despite the fact that they really didn't grasp what it is that is happening here, and that is that we are looking out for the essence of the organization in the world that we are moving forward into. And so we would hope that people would at least consider, if you're not convinced at this point, please take this time and the comments and so on that you hear and take them to heart in terms of how they pave the way for the future in a way that we cannot do the way we currently exist.
I really think that if we don't move in this direction, the organization is going to slowly die. I really do. It's just time to make this change. And those of us who are involved with a lot of other social justice calls, organizations, activities, marches, and so forth, there's an awful lot of both misunderstanding and unfortunate understanding by outsiders on who we are, and we really have to change that.
Okay, someone would like you to help her speak to older members who earned degrees when it was less common for women to earn them. They may see open membership as a loss of something that reinforced their achievement. Does anybody have any suggestions for her?
I think it lifts all of us up when we're helping other women achieve their own goals. And we're going to be better able to do that when we're in a position to interact with where those people are. I don't think it diminishes our own achievements in any way when someone else attains something. And that's what our goal is, so that all women and girls attain economic security, educational goals, inclusion, all of those things that we've been working on for years. And the perception that we are all university employees or something like that, we have to explain that to begin with. And then you go through the whole membership thing. I mean, I've relayed this story to a few of you before. I would love to have my mother, who is 100 years old, join this organization. She's never been much of a feminist, but she's kind of getting there. But she only has 1 year of college. She asked me if she could join because she knew I was real involved in it. And that's pretty embarrassing when you have to tell your mother she doesn't qualify. But there's a flip side to the losing membership too, and that is for those of us who really do want to work in our larger community on these issues. I've run into situations where that degree requirement has actually kind of decreased our credibility as being really serious about those things. And I actually at one point had said that if this degree requirement wasn't reversed last time around, I was thinking of leaving. I don't know if any people are as adamant as I am about it. I'm not going to, I'm a life member. I changed my mind about it. So I'm working from within instead. But I think in the short term, it would be very sad if long-term members felt the need to leave because of something like this. in the long term, I think it's going to help save the organization. If you look at our membership figures over the last 10 years or so, they've gone down a lot. The percentage of money coming in from members into the budget has gone down a lot. We have to reinvent ourselves at this point, and that's what the new leadership is trying to do.
Another question, is this purely a financial decision for National, since you?
Well, this is, I think it's financial in the sense of there's a real risk to the organization if we do not do this. I mean, it's just, the credibility of the organization, and, just as we're not going to see hordes of members showing up at our door, we're not going to all of a sudden see buckets of cash poured into National if we do this. But without this, it's very, we're spending time discussing it like every 2 years, and, that could be done in, something, we could be doing something more productive with that time. And, but I really think the board would not have come around to this just on the basis of, grant writing suggestions.
Fundraising is tactical. This is strategic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if I could, I follow on to Marty's answer to the previous question. I do honor people who, at a time when it was not common to get a degree, fought through and, managed to complete their degrees. I particularly honor all the women who went back, midlife to get their degrees. And it's, but it's not, we're not in the same world. Our message that, look, I got a degree, you can too, and you should, is not one that we have to carry alone anymore. Many people are telling young women that getting a degree is a good thing to do. And so I would hope that our older members would, welcome the diversity that comes with this change, as well as just feeling better about the organization. So.
And at least in the short term, a lot of younger people who share our goals are not going to college. They can't afford it. Mm-hmm. We can't base our long-term membership strategies on recruiting from a population that's going to be drowning in debt for their entire careers.
And just to go back, complete the circle with the older members and how they might feel devalued if the degree that they value so much or took so much energy is no longer a requirement or seems to be necessary. And that is that there are many areas, as Marty, I think, was just beginning to say, that don't need a degree. And there are ways of taking advantage of education that weren't available 40, 50 years ago, so that an equivalent amount of learning, enlightenment, might take the form of a technical competence. And so I think if people can be willing to acknowledge that in 40, 50 years, the world has changed in just about every way. And we are seeing that happen in terms of how education has spread and changed and is still critical, but not viewed in the same way. So to help them, again, what was said, we honor what they've done. It's just that there are broader approaches now.
Yeah. There are a couple of interesting comments in the chat too.
Yeah. A couple here that are kind of, I'm not sure that we know the answers to these yet. Will there be a need for structural change in all levels of AAUW if the amendment does pass?
Not necessarily. I mean, organizations do evolve, but there has been absolutely no discussion of doing away with branches or anything like that, if that's what you're asking. In fact, I think this is going to enhance the ability of the branches to work, you know, more broadly in our local communities. The branches are still going to be, as Ruth said, the face of AAUW.
Another one, will dropping the requirement of a degree also apply to men who join AAUW? I assume it would.
Sure.
Yes.
Equity.
Yeah. So somebody,
And women, men, and non-binary folks.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Whatever.
So somebody says, tell her about the numbers. When we opened this to associate degrees and similar, what was the percentage lift in membership? And how many members do you think we will gain from this nationally? And how many members would we lose?
I'm going to quote the new press secretary. We'll have to circle back on that. We have no readout. But again, I want to add that this is not about numbers for membership. This is about a strategic approach to sustainability for the organization for another 100 years. When I joined in, I think it was 2005 or 2006, we had something like 130, 140,000 members. That's down now. And there are a number of reasons for that. At that time, a pretty good amount of the money going to national was coming from the local level, which meant from dues. That's down also. So we're really looking at both top down and bottom up on all of this. And it is about being part of the 21st century. It took us a while to get into the 20th, and it may take us a while to get into the 21st, but this is the first step.
Someone asks, would there be, so there would be no educational requirement such as a high school diploma or special certificate? And if so, would the word university in our name still be a hindrance? Or be a hindrance?
I haven't heard any discussion of a name change.
Yeah, there's, and
you know, I mean, it's still an aspirational thing.
and there and we can go back to the fact that we have university and college partner members. You know, there's you know, we still have a connection. There's nothing is, we haven't said anything about severing our connection to campuses, so that's still a part of it. So, you know,
and
I would, you know, the women may be the W may be a bigger problem, I think, than the U, but nobody really has had much angst over that. So,
other than thinking we all work for a U.
Yeah.
but I think too, someone asked about that high school. I'd love to see high school students be able to join with us if they want to have high school chapters. This is a branch, you know, this is my own thing. Now I'm speaking for myself. This comes from my work on the ERA and my work with the Women's March, with Black Lives Matter. These kids are not about joining an organization. They are about joining a movement, the movement to enhance equity, diversity, inclusion.
Yeah.
And the degree requirement is a huge barrier to our being part of that movement. And that movement ain't going to go away anytime soon.
You know, and so at some point, I mean, AAUW evolves. The organizations in our local communities may evolve. As you know, I was introduced as a virtual branch advocate. You know, every time National says something like, we need new structures for the young people. Well, you need new structures for people with gray hair too. You know, it's kind of, you know,
we all had to learn Zoom this year.
The standard branch model is not one that works for me. So
I read somewhere that the average age in AAUW now is 72.
I'm still a younger member.
I'm not. but I mean, you know, chew on that a little bit. and think about who has joined your branches over the last 5 or 10 years. And who do you see when you look around at one of your branch meetings? And how do those people look when someone who's 25 or 30 comes into a meeting for a program or because somebody has invited them? You know, those are the kind of things we're really dealing with when we're talking about becoming a more welcoming community, working on women's empowerment issues.
So this may be for you, Nancy. What has been the major roadblock to passage of this or a similar amendment in the past?
I think it's inertia. I think people, I mean, there are a lot of people who think, you know, who probably didn't even think about it that much. It's just AAUW means having a degree to join. That's just what it means. It's in their head. It's in their gut, it's in their heart. And, you know, I'm sure there's some people who at least came to this meeting with that feeling. And our hope is only that some of those people leave this meeting thinking that there is a different way to think about it. And I'm, again, in the one member, one vote, where many members, when you say AAUW, what they think is their local branch, their local community. Not many national members voted, and very few branch members voted, but I think the ones that did were energized with the idea of, this is craziness, I'm going to vote no. And unless we can break through to some of those people and have them see that this really is a change or die kind of issue for AAUW, it won't pass. I mean, I'm not really optimistic we're going to get 2/3 this year.
I think if the focus was truly on equity, if equity was understood fully, talked about, discussed, how does it show up? How do you get it? What's the impact in a person's life? That instead of focusing on somebody's qualification to be able to discuss equity, but maybe not work toward it. That's what we actually want, not just to say that the reason we exist is to promote equity, to get equity for, or have people get equity and so on. So it's a generational kind of thing. It's an understanding really of what AUW is capable of, or perhaps not capable of. And those are all really important discussions.
A couple of questions about similar topic. How are we going to change our marketing or outreach to let younger women know we exist? And someone wants some ideas, things we can focus on to be relevant to a younger crowd.
Diversity, inclusion, the new task force on that, the youth task force, the use of social media, the participation that we do with other women's equity organizations and activists like the League of Women Voters, now ERA Coalition, groups that support the cause that supposedly is what we all joined for. I think each of us has to ask, what is it? Why did we join this organization? What sets it apart from going to a book club or a history club or bridge club or whatever, you know, that's sponsored by some other kind of organization? And we're trying to shift that back. It's fabulous. I've got great friends that I've made in the social aspects of AAUW, but the reason I joined was to fight for women's rights. And that this will help us do that.
And with such
some branches that may mean kind of gradually reversing the priorities of the kinds of activities or something. Every branch is going to have to approach it differently. But if you initially joined because you really wanted to fight for the cause, this is going to help do that.
And that'll,
oh, go ahead, Ruth. Go ahead.
no, I just to kind of finish off, part of what that might also mean is exposure to intersectionality and how the different issues that come about if we stop thinking about just our generic degrees. If we want to really make change, what do we have to know? How do we have to see what we can do as individuals within a group, our branch, in order to impact this huge issue? So the branch serves a purpose, but perhaps like we've talked about before, that focus is really changing, and we have to help people be aware of that.
This person would like to know, besides this town hall, what is the national and state leadership doing to ensure that members are aware of this proposed membership change and that eligible members participate in the vote, because quorum has been a problem in the past?
This is the starting point right here.
Yeah, and I don't think quorum has been a problem when this issue has been on the ballot. So, in fact, yeah, but yeah, there is, you know, again, a volunteer corps going out. We may be making phone calls to branch presidents. We may be doing other things to try to make sure people are aware of this, but it is, you know, and I'm not sure how many states are planning this. I know a couple of states are attending tonight to see if this is something they can replicate for their members. And I'm, you know, there's anybody who wants speakers for that can contact me, and there are other, you know, there are a few people in the chat like Charmin who are available, I bet, to you know, talk to any group that would want to hear more about it. And if it's even a branch meeting, you know, we can arrange it. You know, there are enough Zoom licenses around the world that we can get those meetings going. And
this is being recorded too. There'll be a recording.
And it is being recorded, but it's you know, and it's just a, you know, the pro con, you know, anybody who wants to set up a pro con, I'm not sure how far that's going to go, because it, you know, but we can see what, you know,
that's another one of the questions. Has there been an effort by national or state to join in for branch meetings? So I think that covers that. Someone asked, what percentage of the members vote overall, not for a particular issue?
It's been under 20%, I think, since the one member, one vote started. So that means, you know, and it needs, this is a bylaws amendment, so 2/3 of those voting would have to vote in favor. So if we could get another 20% to vote yes, along with the, you know, almost half the people, but it means increasing the electorate and increasing the number of people who vote yes. And I'm not sure we've got a, you know, sophisticated get out the vote system, but we're going to try. So.
A couple along this line, who is opposed to this? Who would be opposed to this after all the good arguments you've given us for it?
You know, people who feel in their gut that the degree requirement is AAUW. And and they've made their friends, and they, you know, want to have their book groups with, you know, educated women, and they want to do other things with, you know, the word like-minded keeps coming up, and that's obviously, you know, educated women and are not like-minded women, I don't think, but that's, you know, you know, okay, and I'm Karen, I apologize if it's not, you know, they are members whose opinion has succeeded in the past, you know, so there are enough of them out there that think this change should not happen. And I'm still using them because, I mean, it's been 20 years and I'm sorry, but there's a split in the organization, and maybe we can take everything that we've learned about how we can talk to people who don't agree with us and be more respectful and inclusive, but it's hard for me, so I apologize.
I think there's always a fear of change, of not knowing what's going to come about. I don't think this is going to upend things, you know, like from one year to the next, but it is going to make it easier for the branches that really want to work more directly on the equity issues to do so. If there are branches that don't, or members that don't, well, you know, we all have different ideas about how to go about these things. We're not trying to be something we're not. We're trying to be who we say we already are.
Okay, I think I've covered the specific questions. There are a lot of comments in the questions that we do keep these, so, and we will send you some links as a follow-up that we mentioned. If there's anything in the questions that we need to cover, we could do it that way.
And Sandy Bernard dropped her email address into the chat, so we'll put that.
Yeah, we can.
In the
We will
follow-up
share
as
those.
well.
We'll go through those and share.
And
Here's-
just
yeah.
maybe offer our possibility of just chatting with somebody, emailing with somebody, whatever. Whether something comes up on the way home and you say, why didn't I ask that? Or what did they say? All of that.
We can send out, can we send out your contact information then, panelists?
Mine, sure, fine.
Okay.
Yeah, fine, great.
Okay. We'll do it that way then. All right.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, panelists. What a productive discussion. Thanks so much. Next steps? Well, of course, share this information, all of us. Someone said, what are we going to do to communicate? Let's start right now. This starts the communication. So share what you've learned. Talk about the benefits. Have open discussions. And I was impressed with how open this discussion was. Absolutely vote. Somebody was asking about voter turnout. I am sorry to tell you that in 2017, only 12% voter turnout when this question was put before the membership. 12% of Illinois members voted. So that doesn't sound like AAUW to me. We have got to get the vote out on this. And that voting period starts April 7th. It goes through May 17th. Any member who has an email on file at National will get a link, a personalized link that will send you right into the voting site. If you do not have an email on file at National, snail mail will send you instructions on how to vote. So please remind others to vote and take the message forward. Thank you so much, everybody, for your participation. Good night.
Thank you.